Christopher
No.
has asked me to say a specific line.
I did.
And at the place I'm at in my acting career, I do not feel that I should have to take this type of directorial pressure.
I don't know what to tell you.
I feel that the artist inside me should be respected at a level that allows me to determine for my own good what I say.
All right.
When the intro occurs. And so here I am.
All right.
Ready and willing to tell you, our loyal listeners and viewers, that, hey, world, let's do some painting.
Wow. That's an Oscar performance right there. Great job, Jason.
They never call me.
Hey, and speaking of Oscar winning...
They never call me for the freaking Oscars.
They never do?
They don't even call me for the Golden Globes. They don't even call me for, like, the People's Choice Awards.
Blood Walrus, 12 months. Thank you for that sub. Speaking of awesome people.
Kyle Sparks says, oh, dear, what did Chris do now? The things.
Oh, man.
All
don't
the
quit
things.
Your day job. Jason's not quitting. He's staying. He's here.
Paint Liquor, I don't think you understand the nuanced greatness that occurs here every day. Nuanced. Nickelodeon Kids' Choice. I destroy them. That's why they don't let me in there, right? That's why they're afraid to bring me, because they just know that, well, I mean, there wouldn't be awards for anybody else. But they're not really thinking on the efficiency side, because then all of the trophies could have the same exact engraving on them, right? Which means they could be mass-produced, no customization. They just say, here's another one for Jason Craze.
Wow.
You don't have to have as many hosts, because you could just have one host saying, welcome to the insert name of award show here. We'd like to take this time to welcome and bestow upon our illustrious guest, Jason Craze, all of the awards he wins this year. Thank you. Good night.
There it is.
Right?
Oscar award winning.
We only have to listen to one speech. Now, my speech gets to be like 45 minutes long.
Yeah.
Because, of course, there's a lot of people I have to thank.
Yeah.
But it's now 44 minutes and 50 seconds because I don't have to thank Paint Liquor because he's a naysayer. That naysayer. How many sushi points would chat need to cash in for a sneak peek at the 24 new colors coming at the end of the month? What? 24 new colors? Never heard of them.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about.
Never heard of them. I can have a Razzie? Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
How did I miss 44 minutes of stream in 4 minutes? Wow.
Huh?
Yeah.
What?
That's right, Big Bob.
What?
I don't know what you're talking about, Big Bob.
He doesn't know what he's talking about either because he missed the first part.
That's right. That's what the
music
rewind
running in the background
is for.
I'm done when I say I'm done.
Wow.
Immortal Kombat, did somebody say that at the awards this year? That would definitely be me. You can play your music all you goddamn want. I'm not done until I say I'm done. I like the guys that just go up there and they're like, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And then they leave. They leave.
You. This is great.
You know?
Have a nice day.
Thank you so much to all the fans who support my movie. Thank you.
Game delay. New colors coming. I don't believe it. That's correct. Monument Hobbies hasn't released anything new for days. That well has run dry. What are you talking about?
For days.
Last week,
he says.
Huge releases.
That's why he said for days.
And those were beautifully soft releases. And you guys were here
beautifully
to see them.
Soft?
Beautifully soft. Like it came out of
soft?
It came out of the ether and it was well prepared.
Chat, do you know what he's talking about?
That's what I called those releases. They were nice. The smooth landing. We showed you demos. We did so much for you, chat.
Chat, do you have any idea what he's talking about?
I hope so. Otherwise, last week didn't exist.
Does Chris have any idea what he's talking about?
I do, and I'll say it right now. Brush on primers. That's what was released Tuesday. And Matte Varnish and our Age of Honor minis. So game delay, I don't know where you've been, But we've been at Monument Hobbies releasing stuff. So
I've been at home on my couch with my dog.
get behind me now.
Get behind me now. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
My water is dirty again.
My dad says that for some reason. It's just
He says, what, get behind me now?
get behind me now. It's just so silly. Well, we can't focus through all the jibber jabber for the man behind the camera. Big Bob, that is correct. You're right. Let's get this back. Let's get this train back on the tracks. We're painting today. Sanguineous. Yesterday we teased you with the purple painting of the robe, and now we're diving into what appears to be the robe, or the cloth, or the
Yeah, it's not really a robe.
What is it? Where is that thing coming out of?
It's
is
like a loincloth tabard.
A loincloth? I don't know about that. Papa Chicken 25-day stream streak. What? Everybody should share their stream streaks. I'm curious. Share away.
Don't believe the hype.
Share away.
Don't believe the hype.
Flapjack and Nickelsack. Where is that thing coming out of? That's my question.
Huh?
That cloth. Where is it coming from?
His waistline.
I don't know, man.
What do you mean you don't know? It's literally modeled on the model that way.
I don't know about that.
It's from his belt line.
There it is.
Oh my God, you people. Children. Children.
Roadside Ministers, what's up, nerd? Got all my new paint in and they couldn't decide what to work on, so now I have 3 whips going at once. And it's all your fault.
Well,
yeah. Yeah, that sounds about accurate, Roadside Miniatures. Welcome to the family.
I feel that. I feel like that's not a bad thing necessarily.
Always have something going on. That's our motto here. Okran, mine is at 200 but won't let me share it. What?
Lies.
I believe. Let you share a round number, says Source. That's funny. It's like turtle paper stuck on because he doesn't use a bidet. Turlet. I said turtle paper. You said
I was like, what the hell is turtle paper?
Big Bob says turlet, which is hilarious because I say it like turlet. Turlet paper. Big Bob, that deserves some kind of award.
You get 5 million points.
Whoa. Those are Jason Cray's points, by the way. Those aren't sushi points.
No, he gets 5 million sushi points.
You can't give those out.
I give them out. I'm the boss. Fight me.
The economy is in ruins. Sushi
Fight
points
me.
at will. We're creating too many sushi points.
Fight me. Yeah, we've got state inflation. Too many sushi points, chasing too few dreams.
Oh my gosh. If I put in a star of mechs for the monthly challenge but can't finish them, can I still submit whichever ones are finished?
As long as it's 3 or more.
Yeah. There you go.
A star is 5. So as long as you get 3 of them done.
Roadside Miniatures. Also with the Flame On set, I actually achieved my first even non-metallic medal.
Awesome.
Wasn't the greatest, but
that's
it reads.
Awesome.
Nice.
That's really cool.
That is cool.
I love it.
That is definitely an awesome way to start that journey. That's for sure.
Those colors make the decision-making process super easy. Because they just are like, start the dark one, move to the light one. Ta-da, done.
Hemlock Trails Disc Golf Course says, what model is that? MH or GW? This is Artel W. Sanguineous. Which is also I think it's like Angel Paladin or something.
Yeah, maybe they call him Angel Paladin or something like that. You know, that's the legally distinct.
It is
Sam Witchius.
Nanglalius. I can't believe it's not Sanguinui. You name it.
The legally distinct progenitor of the angels of blood.
Voldemort has a question. What's your opinion?
We don't speak that name here.
Voldemort. What's your opinion on trends in miniature painting? Do you think some styles are starting to fade? Also, how would you describe your mini painting?
Okay, there's a lot in there. That's a great
Yeah.
question. What do I think about trends?
Yeah, so we were kind of talking about this yesterday. We were talking about slap chop, all that. So again, the question is, what's your opinion on trends in miniature painting? Do you think some styles are starting to fade away? Also, how would you describe your painting style?
I think that like with anything that has a lot of eyes on it, fashion is very similar. Art follows in that kind of trend nature to some extent. Meaning that if you see a lot of models being painted with a particular feature, OSL, right now in or I think it's coming off of a huge ride is the idea in the we'll call it the professional competition circuit of people wanting to do very stylized, warm and cool lighting to divide a bust. That's been a big thing that was a trend and a lot of people are doing. I'm starting to see that fade away and people focusing on just really good color and light application in general. I think that with the general population of painters, where everybody lives, that those trends are less impactful as far as coming and going. I don't know that we see it shift as much, especially now with the hobby over the past decade gaining so much more traction and so many more new painters on a regular basis coming into the hobby. So you always are getting an opportunity to revitalize techniques with new painters. Things in the way that information is being taught has changed a lot. Obviously, Twitch, like now, YouTube, Instagram, all of the Patreons and places where people can go get information. A lot of those trends or techniques will be identified by the person you're watching. So I don't know. I think that, like, what is my take on trends? I don't like trends. I think that if you turn something into a trend, you've wasted it in the world of art. I think that we look at everything here as a technique. It's like yesterday we got asked, like, do you believe that dry brushing is a beginner-only tool? No. And, like if you see a trend, right, a period in time where a lot of people are dry brushing, my hope is that we all get something good out of that technique being used in the way we're being shown and that it doesn't trend out, right? So unlike fashion, where bell-bottom jeans are in and then all of a sudden you're made fun of for wearing bell-bottom jeans, that shouldn't be the way art is. Art just provides you a lot of tools through the being exposed to those techniques, and then you keep those tools in your toolbox for use whenever you need them. There aren't any right or wrong ones. There are some, like the hot and cool lighting on a bust, and every bust is using it, and it's overplayed, and it isn't very realistic. And so, as an artist, I tend to not like those much. It's not that I don't like the outcome. I don't like that everybody does it and thinks it has to be done to win a contest. I feel like that overriding thought bugs me as an artist. Because art, I want to know more about the artist when I look at your work. And if you're doing the same thing everybody else is in the same exact copycat way, then I don't feel like I learn much about you. But that's the only place I really see trends that like kind of annoy me or that I don't, that I view them as such, if that answers your question. How diluted is that burgundy you're using? Not at all. Just the dampness on the brush. Did I answer everything on there? What was the other end of that? I feel like there was a third part of that.
Yeah. Actually, the third part was, what's your painting style?
Oh.
What if you had to? You do many different techniques, but
yeah, I think that for me, I don't know. I get asked that from time to time, and I don't ever really have a good answer because I don't look at my painting as far as like defined by a particular style. I like to use a little bit more of a painterly approach, use of colors, but then again, that changes on subject matter. Like if I'm painting a military model, I'm not going to go crazy and use a lot of like purples and bright magenta undertones on it necessarily. I'm going to paint it, very earthy, realistic style. So I guess it really just depends on the subject matter. I like to pride myself on the fact that I have the ability to feel confident with almost any technique. And that allows me to pull the right technique out for the time. It means that my style can be kind of like a chameleon to some point. I can kind of do anything. I think a lot of what people view in my work is the texture of my work. I really like to focus on material textures and things like that. So I use a little bit more of a rough brush stroke, a little bit more of a sketchy style from time to time, and that bleeds through. But even that, sometimes I do very smooth work too. So I don't know. Speaking of color choice, you have an one-page rules, Fantasy Saurian that you printed out 150%, so make it bigger. How would you go about painting something like an obsidian sword? Well, obsidian is like a shiny black, right? Like glass, black glass, right? So just like any reflective surface, you just want to find a way to bring high contrast on it. It's almost like the inverse or the negative effect of doing like non-metallic silver, right? Where the base is black and then you do bright, almost to white, bright gray reflections on it. And I think with obsidian, you really have a lot of like very smooth facets, almost like a gem, right? Black Biscuit, great name. You're trying to convince your local game store to stock you all. What can you do? Kick them in the shins, run out screaming Pro rules, and I'm not giving you any more money until you bring it into the store. And then leave a card that says contact support@monumenthobbies.com. Our support@monumenthobbies.com email address is where we parse all those out, and our retail team can get them information, get them some samples if they want to try it. Get them in contact with other stores. We've got hundreds of stores that love our stuff, so it's usually pretty easy to get people to understand. But if they have questions they want to ask, usually the big one is that, stores already have a lot of paint lines or don't know why they would need another paint line. And so we can help them out with that. Just have them contact us. T. Schmidt, I have a masking question. I want to do some camo, and I'm planning on masking with silly putty blobs. I have good color primers, green, black, brown. What order do I do this in? Oh, great question. So I think you have to look at what you want the camo to look like, and in some cases, this is not a simple 1, 2, 3 step process, right? So if you're doing green, black, and brown, the black primer base could be your black, so you don't have to do it again if you plan it out right. I would know if you're doing like tiger stripes, are you doing like cow splotches, are you doing what is the camo pattern? Some camo patterns interleave and you have green over brown, brown over green, depending on where you're at on the model. And so you need to think about that. So sometimes you'll mask off and paint, your green blotches, take that off and then, paint your brown blotches and then go back and paint green again. I like doing camo by hand and not masking a lot of times because of that, because it lets me do whatever I want. But yeah, you just think about it in terms of what you want the final thing to look at. I would say just visually, green, black, and brown, you're probably doing the green last and keeping the earthy blacks and browns deeper in the camo. Think of in terms of how the earth to the tree or whatever you're doing camouflage would work. Boop, boop, boo. Shadowcast says, how do you know how wet to get your brush? Well, we've got a really good video on our YouTube channel that talks about how I only paint with the water on my brush, right? And so, can we go over to the palette? Yeah. So if you look, I've got my cup with my floaties, and I just rinse my brush off in the cup like everybody does. And then if you bring that out, go back here, you bring that out and you've got however much water your brush will hold. It'll be saturated, right? It's got a big drop of water. Big puddle of water will come off on my thumb if I touch it. So that's without wiping it off at all. That can be used. That'll turn any paint you're using into a glaze, right? So immediately you add that much water into a little bitty tail of paint and the paint's going to be super diluted. So then go back over to the palette and I go back and I use my napkin that's sitting here by my cup and I'll wipe that off, 2, 3, 4 times. And that's kind of my general painting level of moisture now. Is it the brush is nice and slick, but notice how it's not leaving like wet spots anymore. It's not leaving big drops anywhere. If I, paint on my hand, you're not seeing much, a little bit of shine, but it doesn't have enough water to like leave a water trail on your hand that beads up, but it's still wet enough. Think of after you get out of the shower and you dry your hair, assuming you have hair. If you don't have hair, you remember what hair was like, hopefully. And you get out of the shower and you dry your hair. Your hair is never completely dry until you use a hair dryer. So you know that area of semi-dry after you've used the towel on your head? That's what you're looking for with your paintbrush, right? you can still tell it's damp, but it's not going to like, you can't squeeze it and get a ton of water out of it. That is general painting for me. That's how I'm using it for right now on this with the burgundy, right, to go over the purple. So it gives me just a hint of translucence, but I'm getting a pretty good burst of color at the same time, right? And then leave more water on there, so I might only wipe my brush off once if I want to come over and grab some burgundy and have that burgundy be see-through, right? Now it's more of a glaze because I got more water on the brush. If I wipe the brush off 3 or 4 times and come over and grab the burgundy, then when I paint the burgundy, it's much more opaque, right? So controlling the amount of moisture on the brush goes a long way toward deciding the dilution of the paint that's going to hit the model, right? And then I generally come and wipe a bunch of the paint off anyway, just because you don't want to touch your model with a huge blob of paint on it at any given time. So hopefully that helps.
A lot of good questions, chat. I'm catching up here with the chat right now. Derpstick has a question. When doing pale/ivory skin, does the primer color matter? I always see people prime Tyranids in an off-white to paint them in the modern Nid Space Marine 2 style scheme. So,
you know, this is a matter of preference. I would paint those black because, again, my argument is that you want the shadows to be baked onto the model from the get-go. And if you use a bright primer, you now have to paint the shadows because the bright primer doesn't create the shadows on its own. That's always a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Because now I have to paint, like, you know, up in the crotch of the model, the armpits, all the dark spots that your paintbrush doesn't like to have to go. It's like playing Operation, right? I don't want to have to do that. I'm a lazy painter by nature, so I don't want to have to mess around with going and spending a tremendous amount of time that is unnecessary. So I start with black primer always, or at least a dark primer, unless I'm showing you guys and gals how to paint with white primer. Because a white primer will allow your first coat of paint that goes on to be more vibrant. So for a lot of people who don't like the idea of layering their colors up, they just want to put yellow on the model if the model's going to be yellow. So if they're painting Imperial Fist, they'd like to be able to just paint yellow. And they think that makes painting faster. Then white or brighter color primers like Bone or whatever are going to make that first color more vibrant and make you feel like you've achieved more with your first brushstroke. The reality is it doesn't speed up the painting because you don't have your shadows. So now you have to go back and find a way to bake your shadows into that model too. Whereas if you start with black, paint yellow ochre over the black, which covers well, and then do yellow, now you've got a good buildup of yellow that has the shadows and the midtones in it, and you're done. Your model looks a lot better. It didn't take as much time. But it takes people experience to get to that point where that light bulb goes off for them. So I'm a big fan of, even when doing, bright, pale flesh, I still use a black primer.
Nice. Lumberjack Tim says, I'm officially a retailer store. Nice.
What?
I'm officially a retail store.
What does that mean? No, you're not. You're Tim. You're Lumberjack Tim. I don't know how you woke up this morning and said, I identify as a
And I need
store.
Samples of new paints dropping in Adepticon.
I think he's lying to us, chat.
I don't know about that one.
I think he's lying to us.
Ooh, Morgul's got a great question. Sometimes when I fail on painting, I lose a lot of my inspiration. How do you stay motivated when you've experienced a creative block or when you're not happy with the result?
This is a great question. I'm rarely unhappy with the result in a way that makes me not enjoy painting. A lot of times the challenge of the way I paint is coming up with new colors that I haven't done before, or trying something new that I've got cockamamie flying around in my head. And if it doesn't look good, then you just roll with the punches and you get it done and you put something else on it. Doesn't mean I'm always ready to do it right then. Sometimes I walk away from the bench and come back and say, okay, well, we'll visit that again later, right? How I get into a slump painting in general, though, does happen, where I'm just kind of tired of it, right? I don't have anything that inspires me. I don't have a model that I look at and makes me want to paint. That's what gets me in my rut most of the time, is I'm either painting like an army and I'm tired of painting the army. It becomes doldrums. It's the same thing over and over again. Or I just don't have a model that is inspired. It's like this Sanguinius model, the whole reason that I was like, Chris, we're going to paint this now, put on the brakes. I don't know. But it was just because this model, I remembered we had it. It speaks to me. and I just got a wild hair up my butt, and I said, I want to paint this model. When I can't find a model that really gets me jazzed, and I'm looking around, because God knows we have a million models here, so there should be always something that can get me ready to paint. And a lot of times that's because my head is just dug into other things. Maybe something else in your life has got you bogged down. I call them unpaid bills. Maybe you haven't taken the trash out or done your laundry, and you don't want to clean your room, and you got all these other things you need to do. And you try to solve the pain of those thoughts with your hobby, but that's placing a lot of responsibility on your hobby, right? And so this is
why don't you spend some time reflecting on that?
Right. This is a therapy moment, in that a lot of us do this. It's human nature to run away from pain and run towards pleasure. But in that statement, the thing that brings you pleasure has a lot of responsibility to take away the pain. So if there's something that if there's a time where I find I'm not enjoying painting, it's probably because I have chores that I've left undone, things I need to get done that I don't like doing, that are preventing me because the buildup of that pressure has reached a point, swept so much under the rug, that now my painting is never focused on the fun part. It's just focused on the I should be doing something else part. So for me, that's what I need to do, is I need to take a breather. I need to go get some of those other things done. And then I immediately find that, oh, that model looks great. Oh, and it's every single time, right? Now, there are times where you just don't feel inspired, where you don't have any unpaid bills, you don't have any chores you need to do, and sometimes you just need to do something else relative to the hobby, right? If you're into 40K, listen to an audiobook, go watch something on Warhammer Plus television, go watch the Astartes video on YouTube, do something that gets you back into the vibe of the world you enjoy. Go read some Tolkien shorts, go watch something in a fantasy genre, read a comic book, gets into that creative vein where the world you love so much is put right in front of you, but it's not you having to do it. You're reading somebody else's work, looking at somebody else's stuff, watching a movie, whatever it is, and then you'll find you get inspired again very quickly because your brain kind of resets itself into that space. Listen to Dungeon Crawler, Carl. It's got some painful moments in it. It's had some blatantly political statements in it that don't fly well with me. So
what's nice though, going back to that question, we have that question quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people have that same question, so that is a good way of putting it. Some real good tips, essentially.
Yeah, and I really believe that there's never a time where your hobby should, and should is a hard word to say, but I don't think your hobby should ever reach a point where you're not inspired to take part in it. I think there's always other pressures that are applied that are making your hobby seem less fun. And like I said, through my life, I found that it's because I require my hobby to have too much responsibility of taking away the pain sometimes, because I haven't handled the things I need to handle. I need to wash my car, so if I'm here painting, it's like, well, why didn't I wash my car? I usually feel that at like the end of the day, and that makes next day's go in and paint thing maybe a little bit tougher. So it can be the simplest stuff.
So if you had to wrap it up, how would you wrap it up? How do you stay motivated to paint? With all that being said.
Oh.
Chad, if you haven't found out, I'll probably make this a video because this is a great thing. People ask this all the time.
It's a tough one to sum up, right? Because it took everything I just said to make it to worthwhile. I don't know that it needs a summary. I stay motivated by making sure that I don't put too much pressure on my hobby to solve the things that are bringing me down. Right? Let your hobby be free enough to be the fun thing you need it to be. Then it automatically solves the things that are bringing you down.
And that's my
paint harder, get gooder. I don't like the paint harder part. Always gets me. Paint harder. Just break your model with your brush.
That was great. I mean, I know that's it's one of those things that it really is a big thing for people, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And it happens to all of us, right? It happens to everyone. You're just like, yeah, I just don't feel like painting right now. And I don't know why. I mean, I've said it before. There's times where, like the guys here, they'll want to go out and do, hobby night at Gamers Guild or something like that. And I'm like, I'm just not feeling it. I don't have anything I'm really interested in,
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes I reflect on why do I not have anything I'm interested in, right? This is the thing I love. You also have to understand it's tough asking me.
Well, I know, because
this is my business, too.
It's second nature.
So, yeah, it's like when people in business ask me, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this? And I say, I'm doing this. and they don't get it.
Exactly.
Because it's that infinity loop.
Yep.
It's like, I love what I do. We've been able to turn our passion into our business. And now my thing personally is to make sure that the passion that has become my business does not become something I dislike because of the pressures that the business puts on it. So that's kind of in what I was saying, is that I have to make sure I take care of Monument Hobbies in all sorts of ways so that Monument Hobbies can take care of me. And that's that symbiotic relationship that you have with whatever choices you've made in your life. You have to take care of all of them, even the bad parts, right? So that your life can then take care of you as well. And those decisions you've made, those hobbies you've created, those time slots that you have in your life, then start feeding positive energy into you as opposed to negative energy when you don't handle them very well. So there you go. That's my therapy. I charge $150 an hour.
Chat, we're going to send you all an invoice.
Everybody's getting an invoice. You're just going to get a random bill in the mail.
I appreciate, to kind of piggyback off that. Don't put too much pressure on your hobby, too. That's a big one that I've found. You shouldn't have a whole lot of pressure around it, right?
No, and a lot of people unknowingly do that. We all do, right? We all get 100%. To a point where it's like, it's like, I really need this hour to be. I do it still.
Yeah.
I have on my calendar a do not disturb hour. We've joked about it on stream before. Right? I have a do not disturb hour on my calendar, and that's kind of like a hobby for me. It's like a time in my day where I have sliced out a bit where I am supposed to be able to not have to deal with anything else other than the things that I've fallen behind on. I can really spend some time getting caught up, whatever. And it gets interrupted more than you can imagine by everybody at this business.
I don't
and
do
lots
it.
of people outside this business.
I keep it sacred.
Yeah.
That's me.
But that is something that is, and I'm using this as an example because in that hour, I have an expectation sometimes of that hour fixing something that day. And that'll be the day where it gets interrupted the most. Is when I have an expectation of it to fix, like, this is my hour. I'm going to get caught up and do the thing I needed to do. And then everybody swamps me in that hour and I don't do the thing I do. And now I feel worse. And that's the same way I look at it with a hobby. There'll be days where I plan to come in on Saturday and paint and just do something, listen to an audiobook, paint for myself or whatever, and some other unpaid bills come up and it prevents me from going and enjoying my hobby. Or if I do, I hate myself for it. And so you just have to find those ways to say, okay, today I'm not going to go paint. I'm going to, do the yard, do all the things I've been putting off. That way, when the next hour crops up where I can break away and do paint, it feels really good.
Yeah. Dazzin has a good question. What's the hardest part of the business for you?
Oh, what an excellent question.
That's a great question.
Managing our growth is the hardest part of my business. And Monument has been scaling at such a pace for so long, and as a family business, pretty much, right? I think it's fair to say we're like a mom and pop shop, right? We're a very small business still in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, technically. Right?
But we are growing at a pace that makes us have to relook at the way we do business on an almost constant basis. So that's just something, if you've never owned or run or been involved at business at a high level, may not make sense. But you're always looking at processes and you're always looking at, how do you do things? What does it cost to do the business? Blah, 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 blah. And at Monument, that just changes drastically every 6 months. Because of our growth over the last 8 years, which we are amazed by constantly. Jen and I just sit around on the couch and are like, can you believe what's going on here? We do it in our business meetings here, right? It's like, look where we were like 2 years ago versus now. And that is the hardest thing because we have crossed where my familiarity and knowledge base was really confident and comfortable years ago. And so now it's everyday learning, right? I'm back to being refreshed because there's new information, but sometimes it's under a crunch where it's like, oh God, we got to figure this out like yesterday. And that's just a lot of pressure. So there's a lot of me decompressing, I think. So, yeah, we have everything here, Orange Cross. Everything we sell is here at HQ. Roaring Oblivion says the problems of success. Yeah, the more you grow, the higher the cost of opportunity is the way it's been told to me that's really stuck. And that's really what is the hardest thing, right? Is that when we were a year or two into the business, it was easier to make decisions. Making mistakes didn't have as high of an opportunity cost. So when you did something wrong, it didn't feel like it was the end of the world. The bigger your company gets, the more the little mistakes start to have a huge impact. And so now you have to look back at, oh, now we need better management structure. Now we need more of everything, right? You know, it's the difference between having one employee and 30 is a huge change to business. And you don't think about it in that sense, right? As a consumer, when I walk into a McDonald's, I just gripe if my hamburger isn't made quick enough. But if that McDonald's just got hit with like, you know, a tremendous neighborhood that got built nearby and their business has spiked, you know, 150% over the last 6 months and they can't hire good people and everybody's mad because they can't make the burgers fast enough, right? That business owner is suffering from success. And so dealing with that is something that, you know, I'm learning. I'm going to seminars and I have a business mentor now and all sorts of stuff. So you're going to be painting your artillery from the new Deathcore set. I want lots of oily grease look around the moving parts. Any tips on how to approach that grit and grime where it makes sense? Mazah. So we have a product called Noosh.
What are you looking for?
Noosh,
there you go.
as a weathering tool is fantastic for exactly that. Right. This was just a very quick dreadnought that I did. This dreadnought was painted in what we call our bruised white, and then just camo green, dark yellow green highlights on all the green parts. And then we took Noosh with black brown mixed. Noosh is a clear medium, right? So it is just a clear painting medium for weathering that you can put any of our acrylics into to turn it whatever color you want. And then when you do, I basically think of it in terms of I dipped this model in Noosh. I didn't dip it in Noosh, but I painted Noosh all over it to where the model looked like the Mud Man. It was just brown, black brown all over the model. And then I don't have any up here, but makeup sponges.
They're down.
Everybody knows what a makeup sponge is. Yeah. Take those wedge makeup sponges and then just wiped. You can get the sponge wet and wipe the paint off, and it gave it this streaky filtering over the top. You could do that just in the joints if you wanted to, because if you could do a super zoom, you'll see how the coloring built up in the joints there. That was just painted with metallics, right? And then the paint left in between because I couldn't, you know, when you rub it off, it's going to stick in between the slots and the details there, the rivets and such. And so it does exactly what you're talking about. That kind of oily, greasy, mucky look is because the paint just doesn't come out of the low spots. So rather than putting a wash on in what we call an additive process, meaning you add paint to the model, it stays there and has an effect, Noosh is a subtractive process. You put the paint on and then you wipe it off, and everywhere you can't reach when you're wiping it off, it stays. And so it's more of a random application built on the model's ability to hold paint in recesses and deep spots. And so you can apply it. I could come in and just paint it on that elbow joint and then wipe it off with my finger, and it would give a really cool effect of paint, you know, jammed down in the inside. So that's the biggest, easiest way. And then you can go back and I would do little droplets of Noosh with burnt orange over the rivet, and then take my brush and wet it and then just streak it down. Right. And then that's what created all these little individual rust streaks on the model. So you can play with it and do all sorts of really cool stuff. That's awesome. And, you know, we've done it in ways with mixing up and doing the same thing, streaking on a tank. We just had this video. We didn't get to the deep weathering parts of it there yet, but just the airbrush stuff, right? So we did the initial airbrush stuff, but we'll have more videos coming out on how I use Noosh to do the streaking and all of the buildup of grit and grime on this tank as well, which is more like, you know, like what you're going with your artillery, because they're like tanks and siege guns. But all of that is the same, right? A little bit of minor chipping and then weathering around the details and making sure that you've got that greasy, oily, well-used, not super rusty, right? But it does have the buildup of muck and grime. Derpsy said, would orange oxide be good for Noosh and putting it over 40K Death Guard? You could. I like to use a little bit darker. Remember, whenever doing filters, I like to use a darker color than you want to see it, right, as your starting point. Because if you start with orange oxide, it might be a little too bright when you Noosh it, and it might not give you that shaded recess feel. So I would start with burnt sienna, and then if that's too dark, then you go back with your brush and stipple in a little bit of burnt oxide to highlight it back up. Because think of your weathering as still needing highlights like every other painting thing you do. Everything you paint should have a shadow, a midtone, and a highlight. everything, your effects, everything. When we chip models, they get a highlight and a midtone, right? It depends on, I guess it depends on the detail you want to add, right? But I would think of it in terms like that, right? So if you want a rusty, dirty effect, go ahead and start with a darker color and then go ahead and add a lighter color to it as that midtone or highlight as needed. Works a lot better. I think if you specifically want an oily look, you could also add some glossy varnish over it if you wanted different finishes on different materials. Yeah, well, okay, then you can just go straight into our petroleum brown, right? So we have a paint called petroleum brown that is, while we don't call them effect paints, it really is an effect paint. It's a gloss. It's one of only 2 gloss colors we have. We have petroleum brown and dark crimson. Dark crimson was made as a way to do like blood splatter effects, so it has a gloss to it. And petroleum brown has a gloss to it too, where it's a little bit more translucent. It's not an opaque paint. So with a little bit of water on your brush and the petroleum brown, you can dabble that around, generally on like flat surfaces, like on the engine deck on a tank or something like that, that looks like little puddles of spilled oil that have kind of dried or coagulated on surfaces. This works great. And it does have that gloss built in. So 100% you can do that too. All right, that burgundy looks pretty good. I guess I probably want to do the burgundy on the back side of the tabard too. I didn't really worry about the underside of the cloth on the back because you can't see it much, but this, a little bit different.
Artistic Outlaw. On the shop, are the Pro Synthetics the new synthetics you've been working towards?
No. Pro Synthetics are the ones that I'm using right now. Even though these have the test handle blue, these are the same brushes. Pro Synthetics are what I use most of the time. The ones that you've seen me working on are what we're calling our Dauntless brushes, and those will be in the shop come around May or so, I'm hoping. Those were the white handle brushes that you've seen me use over the past months. I think for nearly, over a year, I use those white handle brushes. Yeah, I kind of like not, well, no, I guess I can't. I kind of like not having the color on the inside of this, but I think that's cheating. It's just me being lazy.
Swifter Bear, is the base taped or just textured? I believe
What's that?
It's just that's just the base, Swifter Bear.
It's just a resin base.
Yeah.
It's cracked, like he's stomping the demon's head into the ground there.
It'll be fun to paint. Roaring Oblivion, do your Pro Synthetics taste like Weasel? They do not.
I don't know what Weasel tastes like, thank goodness.
Never had it.
And you should not be putting your brush in your mouth.
Quick question. Do you guys have a recipe for non-metallic silver? Or no, non-metallic still or silver?
Still? Steel. Steel.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming you meant, Swifter Bear.
Sure, tons. You paint it all the time.
See, actually, I think there's also a YouTube short on that, I believe.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, and I just recently did the axe on the warrior. The short that we have is the axe on the warrior done by Jordan.
Yeah, here it is. Yep. I'm going to...
Is a great one.
I'll ping you this right now.
I'm a big fan of starting in with things like Payne's Gray, Blue Black, that realm of color as a base.
Oh, I lost the question here. Where is that so I can ping you? Here we go. Swifter Bear.
But the, let's see, what have we done here recently that has that? So this is all like a darker steel. for the armor, right? And that's all dark sea bin and white blue, I believe. Mix those up as you go. So that's probably just 2 colors. The same for the gauntlet over here. So kind of a non-bluish steel. It still has a little bit of blue from the dark sea bin, but the dark sea bin is more of a greenish blue, it's a dark blue-green. And then you have stuff like here, where there's a lot more blue in the steel, right? This would be Payne's gray and white blue. Or you could get a similar reaction with blue black and white blue. But I like white blue in there. You also have things like how I did the sword with the wraith over here, which is all pale yellow and blue black. There's some dark purple and dark blue in there as well. But this was all done with pale yellow. You can see how my highlights start to get a little greenish out of the blue black as we add the pale yellow in, and then bright neutral gray as the kind of final shine on it. So that works. There's a myriad of ways to do it. The Nurgle Knight guy has a couple of different ways on there. Right. Again, the sword is more grays, and then up to bright neutral gray, and then a little bit of yellows glazed in there to reflect sunlight. And then the armor itself, again, is using that dark sea bin, white blue, jades, right? Some yellow greens to get various coloration. If you want to do a super zoom on this guy, you can see the various colors that I do in there. A little bit of rusty color underneath the armpit, some yellows, some greens, just some bruisey colors to give it a little bit more environmental feel on it, right? So steels and silvers, and then, like I said, the sword edge is all in grays. That's all like warm gray, dark neutral gray, bright neutral gray, and then you can see how I've brought like a glaze of warm yellow over the top here where it faces the sunlight, my brightest shine, and the feel of the being out in the sun kind of a gig going on. But you can get a feel for how those various colors work. I like a lot of blue in it, but there's times where just using gray can work just as well if you go back with a little bit of color to represent the reflection of the environment. If I'm going quick, then starting with a blue black or a Payne's gray dark blue style base helps a lot, because then I'm not really planning on spending a lot of time adding environmental colors in. The metal just looks like it has some blue sky reflection built in. Speaking of blood effects, I'm going to be painting up some flesh eater quartz. So if I wanted to have like dried caked on blood with some fresh blood on top, what would be a good base? Like burnt red, maybe mahogany is your best bet? So mahogany as a base will dry and give you that kind of crusted over near brown dried blood. And then over the top of that, you do like the dark burgundy. What did I just recently do blood splatters on? Was that it was the Trench Crusade stuff, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, it was like the Trench Crusade girls. I don't have them up here. But we did some blood on some of the Trench Crusade armor using the same thing, but I just used the dark crimson and just flicked it with a brush onto the armor, because it dries really dark, but it's also a gloss, so it has some really cool effects that can go quick. So if you just want to go fast, then just dark crimson by itself works fine. If you're spending more time, then doing a stippling of the mahogany first, and then the bright crimson over the top of that, or the dark crimson over the top of that, works really well. Manu, what's going on? Yeah. This one is. Oh, they both do. Yeah. So this is just dark crimson. If you want to super zoom in on this. That's just dark crimson spattered. I actually just blew the airbrush on a brush loaded with paint, so it spattered dark crimson out. And that's all that is dark crimson. Right? And where it builds up, where there's more paint, it turns darker, and where there's less, it blends out, especially over something like a flesh tone. And then here on armor, same thing. You've got the dark crimson like on the hands and on the sword. So it does not look like, bright, fresh blood. It looks like embattled, could be fresh mixed with mud, or it could just be the blood is caked on there over time. So I like that. It's a great effect paint for that. I don't do those effects a lot, but when you need them, it's a fantastic way to get it done. Is the matte varnish the same varnish as the regular Pro-Acryl matte paints? So, in terms of chemically, no. The regular paints are very matte, but they do not have the same product in them. They have parts of the same product. The matting agent is the same. Does it give you the same matte finish? It gives a slightly less matte than things like coal black, but is more akin to the base part of the line, yes. It's meant to give you a really good matte finish. It is built for airbrush. If you're going to do it on the brush, use multiple coats. Is there a way to avoid the chalky look when dry brushing? Attack Frost asks. Yes. The chalky effect is done by generally having too heavy of a hand when applying the dry brush. Heavy a hand meaning you're hitting the model too hard. Let's go in. We show on our tank that we just did. If you can pop in a super zoom on this. This was all dry brushed to bring the edge details out, the rivets and the edge details, and you'll notice there's no buildup of texture really, right? It looks like thin brush highlights. These lines here were done by brush, but all of the vertical surfaces, right, and even the highlight across the top of the rounded turret were all done with dry brush, and you'll notice there's not a lot of excess texture there, and that's just because you keep the brush really dry, meaning not a lot of paint on it, and then you use kind of a light feathering brush approach to it, and that means you might have to go over areas a couple of times in order to get to work. But if you leave too much paint, or if you have too hard of a hit, you're trying to get it all at once, then you're gonna get that dry brush stroke is going to extend beyond just the raised area. It's going to hit areas next to it, which gives a blurred look or a chalky effect. Or if you run your dry brush too long and it has too much dried paint built up in it, every time you hit the model, it has like a little puff of smoke. And that little puff of dried paint will lock onto the model too and make it look like chalk or whatever. So, you'll know when it's getting too thick, and then you clean your brush, dry it all the way off, start fresh, and season it, I call it again. Work it back up to where it wants to be. But yeah, you can do dry brushing at a very effective rate and not get any of that. It really is just a learning the technique and getting confident with it. Controlling the amount of paint on the brush, like everything. I know I sound like a broken record, but that is one of the biggest parts of painting, is controlling the amount of paint on the brush commensurate to what the effect you're trying to generate is. And with dry brushing, you want less paint on the brush and reload more times than more paint on the brush and dry brush the whole model at once, because you will get a very textured kind of mucky look if you try to do too much at once. Dry brushing is like doing fine detail highlighting. It's that you have to get a little bit of paint, wipe most of it off, dry brush a small area, clean the brush, not clean the brush in water, wipe it off again, then go get a little bit more paint and wipe it off, and then go back to the model and dry brush another small area, and keep doing that until you notice that every time you're hitting the model, you're getting little puffs of paint, dry paint on the bristles, because the paint on the bristles starts to seep in. You're not getting it all out, it's drying, and then when you're hitting it, it's flying off the brush in particles. And so then you wash the brush, get it damp, wash, you don't have to use soap, but, rinse it, wipe it down to dry again, and then start over. Also, you can get streakiness from dry brushing if you use a damp brush. So be careful with that. As a very simple beginner technique that we teach people comes early on in your painting journey, it is one of the most difficult to learn how to use properly. Ever consider adding inks to the paint line, asks Zazin. No, because we have the transparents, which are much better. The transparents can be added to the opaque paints to boost vibrancy if that's what you're looking for, but they also are see-through, or most inks are very opaque. How do you teach new painters to test they have the right amount of paint on the brush? Make sure properly loaded. TK. So We talk about that on my thumb palette video a little bit, and in the moisture video, right? So like painting right now, if I'm going to go and do, get some paint on my brush, and I've got, royal purple. Can you pop in a zoom on that? You'll see that that's not a lot of paint, but it is built up on the tip. So a lot of people say, well, I don't have much paint on my brush. That's a lot of paint. So unloading that paint on my thumb palette, I so elegantly call it, make sure that now the paint on the brush is at a controllable amount, meaning I'm not going to get a big blob of paint off. And when I go use this, I will still get a good amount of color, even though it doesn't look like I have much paint on the brush. Remember, you don't see all the paint that's on the brush. It's in between the bristles. So even though it looked like I took most of the paint off, I can still paint that entire tile with royal purple, right? So I still get a good amount of color on my brush, but now it's all controllable. I don't see brush strokes. I can blend it nice and easily, all because I didn't go and do it with a huge amount. So if I go back and get another brush stroke like this, right, and now I've got that big dollop of paint on there again. Now if I start painting with that, right, I start with a big chunk, and now I've got like big amounts of paint. Pop in again. Right, I've got a big amount of paint build up there on the side that I have to feather out, and I push it around, right? And now it's going to dry quicker on the model because I didn't have enough dampness, right? So where I might get a little bit more vibrancy, I got to make sure that that's what I want. So if I want one coat very vibrant compared to this one, right, I leave more paint on, but I better be working in a large area because I have to push that paint further. If this were a small detailed area and I had that much paint, I'm going to wind up with brush strokes showing through and texture to the paint because I've got a big blob that I'm trying to manage. So I typically start here and do like 2 layers to build up the vibrancy I need.
What about an aquamarine with transparency? Asked Papa Chicken.
What's that?
A color mix for aquamarine with transparency only.
Tell me what. I would use green and white. Right? The green and white will give you an effect like this.
Oh.
That's what that color is. It gives you kind of a jade.
Nice. You said that's with green and white
transparent? Yeah, transparent green and transparent white mixed together gives you this. Now, of course, this was over white highlights, right? I painted the area where the glow was because this is an OSL, but I painted the area white, and then I mixed the transparent green with transparent white, and this is the color I got. Yeah, the green and the white will give you more of a jade, right? Remember, green, even though it's funny because the transparent is a single pigment green. It is not yellow and blue, so there really is no blue to it. It is a phthalo, so as a green, it trends more blue as a pigment. So it's not a spot-on green, as you would think. And that's what makes the transparent green work for that, is that the pigment itself trends a little bit more in the bluish-green space.
Rainer, rating with 29. Thank you so much.
Hey, what's going on, Rainer?
Appreciate those raids. Thank you so much, Rainer.
Hello, folks.
Welcome in, everybody.
Zazan asks, what's the biggest animal you could take in a fight? A bear, a very large bear. Maybe a hippo. I'm not a scared guy.
I think I would take the bear over the hippo.
I feel like we had this discussion. It wound up with me riding the hippo naked with like eagle claws that I'd broken off or something, swiping at people. Was it a hippo? I don't remember what it was. A rhinoceros? I don't remember what it was.
I would not fight a hippo.
I'm not scared. I'm not messing with elephants though. They're too cute. So. And I feel like they're smarter than we are, so I'm not. They'll gang up on me.
Yeah, the transparent set is an awesome set.
Most versatile paints we make.
Yep. Very versatile. That link I just posted, and I'll post it again, that is the link to the transparent video that Jordan and I made. So check that out.
Somebody was asking, what would the colors for shade, midtone, and highlight on pale skin be?
Oh, yes. Derp 6. Sorry, I missed that one. Where is that?
Down.
Here it is.
It says, what PA paints would be good for the shadow, midtones, and highlights on pale skin? So pale as an adjective is tough because it doesn't include a color. There can be pale blue, pale green, pale human, pale pink. When I did these guys, the idea was to give you skin that felt like they hadn't left the cave in a while. They don't see a lot of sun, right? So this is pale. This still has my standard dark purple, dark magenta, bright yellow green underpaint to it. And then we just put red gray and olive flesh over the top of that, right? I forget what other colors I used. And that gives me my what I consider to be the pale coloration is the olive flesh at the very end. But all the other colors for your midtones and your shadows are the colors that give skin life. So the dark purple, the dark magenta are blood and veins and fat underneath the tissue. And then by glazing over with the red gray and then the olive flesh, I get the light color that gives me the idea that they don't see the sun very often, right? But it's still alive, right? So having that magenta in the area between the pecs and under the neck and all that stuff still makes sense to do, right? Palm of the hands, things like that. So for that, I like that. But for pale flesh, I really like our olive skin tone. It does a really good job when it's done as the final layer to do pale flesh. And then your shadows and your midtones are whatever you want them to be. I treat it just like normal skin, except instead of moving to like shadow flesh or tan flesh, I just use olive flesh straight off the bat.
For glazing colors on Sanguineous, are you mixing with a wash medium, or is that through thinning with water?
I'm a horrible human, and I just use water. I use very dirty Arizona tap water. So everything we've done here, other than the wings, when I used the transparent white, it was mixed with our glaze wash medium to airbrush the transparent white over the base coat of the wings, right? You get that cool kind of pearlescent mother of pearl feel on the wings, where the white and the turquoises and the purples and the magentas and greens and everything kind of come and go in and out, but without having to use multicolor paint or color shift or anything. Derpstick says like a ivory bone color. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so just like I just showed you. Bone as a first layer would work well, and then ivory flesh over the top of that. Olive flesh over the top of that.
Okay, so going back up a little bit here, this is what you were talking about, game delay. I don't know how it works, but we had that discussion about Jason fighting from Hippleback, and not long after he said he's working on an undisclosed game.
Yeah, so my undisclosed game deals with spaceships, so no hippo riding Jason.
So avian. So when is the Naked Fuse riding a hippo with a chicken talons going to be immortalized as a miniature? What would be a fun mini?
Tim is like, hippos are the most dangerous animal in the world. Yeah. I don't know that they're the most dangerous. They are definitely the most skittish and territorial and hurt a lot of humans every year because humans are dumb.
That I would not be fighting. Oh, here's one.
Mixing transparents to make speed paint is so much fun. They also they end up being so much more easy to use as they don't stain like inks if you glaze medium. Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
yep. Plus, they don't move. Even acrylic inks, even though they have a little bit of acrylic medium in them, are not as resilient as acrylic paints. Our transparent paints are actual acrylic paints. They stay where you put them. They don't re-wet. They don't move around. You can airbrush the hell out of them. The limited opacity straight out of the bottle makes them tremendously valuable for all sorts of techniques, whereas inks start as very opaque in most cases. And are tougher. They have a sheen. If you ever use like a black ink, it has like a greenish sheen to it a lot of times, like India inks and things like that. A lot of the colors will have a weird sheen to them. So I love our transparents over inks in every single instance. Do the transparents dry matte? Yes. Yeah, you can see here, this is no varnish, and this is transparent white over the top of these wings, and it's completely matte, just like all of our colors. What's my favorite workup for African skin tones? I start with black brown damn near every single time, although our dark flesh is very good for Middle Eastern dark skin tones and North African style skin tones. Depends, like get a reference point, because African has everything from very pale skin to very bright skin. You can imagine like Egypt is pale near white, and then Central Africa, Eastern Africa, very, very dark, near black. Even has some like purplish blues that you can put in there in the shadows that work really well. But I like black brown as a starting point, and then I really love black brown with advanced flesh tone or shadow flesh as a mix in. So start with black brown, right, which is a very desaturated brown because of the black. And then either advanced flesh tone or shadow flesh. Shadow flesh will bring a little bit more pinkish into it. Advanced flesh tone will be a little bit more yellow, as you can see. But either one of these works great. And then you just continually add whichever one of these you choose to the black brown until you get to that point where you know you're about to turn into Caucasian flesh. And then you remove these and you actually pop in something like tan flesh and do your highlights with tan flesh, right? Like the shine spot on the forehead and stuff like that. That's a great way to start. Then, of course, you can glaze in all the colors for bringing it to life that you want. There's an amazing amount of ways you can do that. But I really like that. Black brown makes it super simple as a starting point, and then mixing your flesh tone into black brown gets you all those mid-tones. You can do a little bit more yellows for certain things. I would pull up reference material and find, you know, I forget what it was that I did last time. Jordan did a short, and I pulled up a lot of Google search info for him on dark skin tones, and we just looked at makeup models are a fantastic way to do that because obviously it's a face which has a lot of shape to it, so it has a lot of different light, and they usually light them very nicely. So if you can find dark skinned models that they shoot for makeup, it will give you a lot of really cool coloration.
This is it.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm gonna post it.
That's more of like a Middle Eastern. Mm-hmm. Jason's game is not spaceships, but freighters. The rules follow deck management like Tetris. I wish. You have to spend your whole time fitting all the crates into the hold. Jesus has done like 3 paint strokes on that model today. That is not true. I put all of that burgundy on this model today, as well as some of the royal purple. You guys keep asking great questions, so blame yourselves.
Hey, this
is on you.
We're good.
This is on you, folks. Red oxide. Red oxide, nerds. 3 strokes. Tim, he's painted more on his thumb. I have, because I've been using my thumb as a way to show people the wonderful world of painting, Tim.
That is definitely one of... You can definitely see trends in our questions. It's very interesting.
Oh, 100%.
We get a lot about the motivation one. You get a lot about like the chalkiness, the amount of water on the brush, you know.
100%. Yeah. Painting is not the simple task that people want it to be, right? Color doesn't always respond the way you want when it's in a physical form, you know. It's not like lighting a scene for your camera.
Yeah.
You know, where you can say, I want a yellow backlight. So you turn on a yellow backlight and you get the color you want. You know, paint doesn't work that way. You got to figure out, okay, how do I use this paint that I have to create a yellow backlight on this model?
3 paint strokes is more work than Chris does in a day. Facts, little Billy.
Little Billy. To my rescue, my hero.
Nicholas, can you demonstrate how you would apply paint to the model in your hand?
That would be the right question if you want to see me actually paint, right?
There it is. How would you finish this model?
I love it.
And could you do it over a...
Chat, don't go changing.
A 1 week period.
Chat, don't go changing.
Gradients are hard for me, says Tax Frost. Gradients. Yeah.
Blending is what you mean.
Gradients and blending, is that the same terminology when it comes to like...
Well, a gradient is formed from your blend, right? So the blend comes first and makes the gradient. Mm-hmm. The gradient is the travel of color,
the result,
right, from one to another, or from one to multiple, right?
Blending creates the gradient.
Yeah, blending creates the gradient.
Kinda
so
like
if your
right now.
blends are too tight, you won't have a gradient. You'll still just have a very smooth transition from one color to the next, but it'll be almost like a banding of color. You can still blend it. It just eliminates that line that comes in between them.
Yeah.
So technically it's still a gradient. It just happens in a really small area. When we think about gradient, it'd be like if you painted over the side of a tank and it started white in the front and black in the back, and it went through all these amazing grays and you couldn't see where one color stopped and started. That's typically where we say gradient. Yeah. But it exists at the smallest levels of the stuff we do. And it really is. It's blending. And so figuring out where your comfort level lies in blending paint is your biggest help in feeling good with those gradients, if we want to call them that. And there's a bunch of ways to do it, right? I do, on every model, I use at least layering and glazing. At least. There are times where I will use wet blending, but I don't do it a whole lot. When I wet blend, it's on my base coats. I don't typically wet blend later on the model. It's too finicky for me.
Too finicky.
Too finicky, meaning that I have, like, if I was going to wet blend in this little bitty area I'm working in right now, it would, like, drive me bananas. Give me an aneurysm. I get impatient very quickly with wet blending. So I use it in base coats where I can be sloppy. You know, I don't have to worry about the wet blend transitioning over into other areas where that color's not supposed to be, that kind of stuff. But what I'm doing right here, moving through from the royal purple to the burgundy to now the red oxide, is create, if you want to punch in close. Yeah. You know, whereas I've been very sketchy on the rest of the model, this is creating nice gradients and nice blends as I get to my final red. I just want all these other colors. Coming out of purple into red, the burgundy gives me a good transition there. The red oxide now pushes it into my first coat of real red, right? But the purples and the burgundies stay in the midtones and the shadows.
Ooh, great question from Danger here. Any tips for glazing with the transparents? Should we
thin them way down?
More? Yeah.
What were you about to say, Chris?
No, that was the rest of the question. Any tips for glazing with transparents? Should we thin them more?
Thin them way more. The transparents are super vibrant, so you can glaze with them right out of the bottle. They are they are not quite fully opaque, so you can glaze with them. It will turn the model that color 100%. If you take transparent green, transparent blue, transparent red, orange, whatever, straight out of the bottle and don't thin it and glaze it over your model is now that color. And your colors underneath it are just things that help accentuate the color you just glazed. If you want to add a hint of yellow or orange or whatever, thin the crap out of them. The nice thing about the transparents being single pigment paints, you can literally thin them 99% down dilution and you'll still get a little bit of color out of them. Put it over white. Like do Space Marine lenses, paint the lens white, do a little bit of black wash in there to get the rim darkened up, then paint another little sliver white like we talked about yesterday, and then put a little bit of just a way thinned down transparent orange in there. And it looks like clear plastic that's just tinted orange, right? That's what makes them so versatile is you can get color out of them all the way through from 0 dilution to nearly 100% dilution.
So would you say err on the side of way more thinning than you think you need?
In most things, yes. You hear me say that a lot.
That's something that I've learned the hard way. Is like, okay, I feel like I've thinned this down, but it's not that color. So
here's the simple truth of painting. You can always do another layer to get to the color that you want. You can never erase a layer you've just done to get back what you missed. Make sense?
Yeah.
So always over thin. The worst thing that can happen is you thin so much that when you touch the model, you get no color at all. Who cares? Do it again. Right? As you're learning, easiest thing in the world. Thin more than you think is necessary. If somebody on YouTube tells you to thin 2 to 1, thin 5 to 1. And try it. Because number one, you don't know how they're thinning or what they're using. So everybody always asks me ratios. And I'm like, you see my ratios live on stream. I go, our very scientific method. And I go, and I squirt a bunch of water or a bunch of glaze and wash medium into my paint. Because I don't want to have to worry about what the right ratio is. You're thinking about art wrong if that's what you're doing. You'll get a feel for it because you'll, at one point in time, get an amazing outcome. And you'll do it like that every time.
Alex WP, do you have a preferred true metallic gold recipe workflow? Non-metallic isn't really in my wheelhouse yet and doesn't sound practical for an ever-expanding Custodes army.
Yeah. I at one point in time was like, I want to do Custodes. They're all non-metallic gold. And then I painted one and I was like, hey, my life. And I never finished it. So I think we turned them green. And we were like, you know what would be cool is a color that isn't gold. And I came up with some excuse or read a book, and they were like, there are other colors of Custodes. This is a lifesaver. Yeah, I like starting with a base of opaque color. Generally, I like something like warm brown, right? Warm brown, dark golden brown, dark yellow green work really well. You'll notice with a lot of my non-metallic golds, I start with a base of green, right? And so that works well when doing metallics as well. This was all done with dark camo green, and then into my yellows for my gold. It's non-metallic, but I would do the same thing. I would use like dark camo green, and then maybe a camo green highlight on it, and then I would go over with a thin layer of either bright gold or rich gold, whichever one. Bright gold is a little less orangey, rich gold is a little warmer, so it depends on how you want the final outcome to look. Glaze that first layer over so it gets a lot of the greens or the oranges that you've used. If you use burnt orange or burnt sienna as an undercoat or warm brown, and then glaze the metallic over the top, and that'll give you the sheen. And then you paint into your midtones and highlights the actual full opaque gold. So you don't really have a full opaque metallic color in the shadows. It's just a glaze of it, because you can glaze with metallics, right? Works great. If you don't feel like glazing or you're not comfortable with glazing, then use bronze, like dark bronze, or magnesium, and then blend that into your golds. So imagine, let me grab dark bronze, magnesium, and rich gold, right? And let's show you real quick. Right, let's do something real quick. Because I don't paint with metallics enough, so we'll do it live. Let's take magnesium because it's my favorite metallic now. Sorry, dark bronze.
Do you want to paint on something?
Sure. You got anything?
I think so.
Sure. You got something?
What do you want to paint?
You got another warrior? Doing an axe would be good.
Oh, you know what? Use this one that has the green on it.
Oh yeah, we did the cape.
So what is this, Jason? What are you doing?
Oh, we're just doing metallic gold workup.
Okay.
Right. So I'll get magnesium, rich gold, and bright gold. You could also use bright bronze if you wanted to. Oh, this doesn't look like it's open.
Which one?
The bright gold.
Oh.
It is not.
What?
I know.
Well, you used a lot of non-metallic golds. And we just replaced all these. I think that's one of the ones you needed.
So also bright gold. There we go. And so if we want to look at the simple process here is really easy, right? If you this is again, if you don't want to use opaque colors and you're not comfortable with glazing, then we're just going to start with magnesium. Magnesium lays a good shadow but keeps a metallic feel because it's a metallic paint, obviously. So don't worry that it's not called gold. A lot of people, it's surprising to me how many people are like, no, I said I want to paint gold. I'm like, yes. So start with magnesium or dark bronze, but I don't want to paint magnesium or bronze. I'm like, my God, people, do what I say. Because this gives you a good shadow base, right? But it maintains that your shadows will still have a good metallic shine to them. I'm just going to do the blade. Doesn't make sense. Gold blade, I don't know. It's fantasy. Go with it. Stop asking questions. We'll do a world where the gold is the hardest substance and steel is soft. So we'd make the handle and all the bits steel and the blade gold. That's our world. It's my book. Okay. So you can see magnesium strides that fine line between silver and gold. It has enough to be a base for a white metal like silver. You can imagine putting silver over this. It's going to make the silver be a bit tarnished, right? But by putting gold over it, it already has that brownish yellow nature to it that just gives you a really good shadow for golds. Okay. But now what I'm going to do is you can see that if I were to put, let's do this. If I have just rich gold, right? If I were to put rich gold over the top of that, that's a little bit too much contrast. So mix the two. Give myself a mix of 50/50 rich gold, right? And magnesium. And now I get a nice dark yellowish metal out of that. Remember, metallic paints are just paints. They mix and do everything you want like every other color you got. So you can mix them, glaze them, do whatever you want. Feather, every painting technique you can imagine. Some will be a little bit harder because of the solid contents, like airbrushing is always a trick to get right, but not impossible. You just got to get used to it, right? I'm going to feather this up on some of these upper surfaces here. Stipple it around so I got some texture. And down here. Okay. Yeah, so just a 50/50 mix of magnesium into rich gold here. And you know, whenever I say 50/50, it's just eyeballing it, right? So I've got matte there and here. Feels good, about 50/50. Then when you've got that done, then you can either pull a little bit more of the rich gold into that mix. So if you're doing something that you really want to be deliberately detailed, you're going painting a display model, then just pull a little bit more of the rich gold into that magnesium mix. It's still going to be a little bit darker, but it allows you to move up step by step, right? And then you can kind of start finding your highlight area. Think of it no differently than any solid material you paint, right? You just want to find where your highlight would go and start painting that highlight area in, like such. Again, find my kind of stippled, just this rough texture of the face of the axe here allows me to just kind of stipple color around in my higher areas where I might find some brightness. Same thing down here, a couple of stipples there, grab these edges, and maybe right here where the blade comes out of the shadows. Right. You get that look right there. All of a sudden you've got, you catch like this bottom edge and you see how it goes from the pure magnesium to the mix to the gold now coming in. Right? So you can blend metallics and get a really good thing. The transition isn't always evident because of the way metallics reflect, but you can see how much dimension I get out of this by just doing my highlights on it. Works really well. Okay. Then I go to just rich gold. So now I don't want to pull it into my mix. I just want to come out the back side of this puddle. Right? Now I've got the brightness of rich gold. And then I just start finding my edges maybe, depending on how bright you want it to be. Right? And of course, you can adjust this as you need to get it to where it's as bright or dark. Leave less of the magnesium showing if you want it brighter. Leave more of the magnesium showing if you want it to be a much darker blade. It's up to you. Right? That's just standard use of blending. Here, I'm just going to put the rich gold kind of right in this shine area right in the middle there. I'm going to get it to go on the edge of these spots that stick out. There, maybe a little bit here, a little bit right here at the end. Again, using my 50/50 method to where I'm only really getting my finger to kind of blend that a little bit better. Right? I'm only painting 50% of the area that I had it in before, but look at that shine spot I get up here now. Right? I'm starting to use the same mentality I would for non-metallic metal. It's just not as visible throughout everywhere you turn the model, but that is a really, really good blade edge there. Then we go in with the bright gold, not mixing it into anything. Just like when you're painting non-metallic metal, you don't want to do blended color the whole way. You want to make a jump for your brightest highlight. And then we just catch this brightest edge again, which is kind of right here in the middle. Bring that over a little bit on that edge, a little bit over this way, and then right in the middle of where I painted that rich gold, come in with the bright gold, and then bring it along the ridge here at the blade, but not the whole time, just kind of right in the middle there. Maybe hit a couple of these edges again. And then maybe it's just this littlest part of the tip here. Just the tip. And you can see the bright gold right there, sitting inside the rich gold that extends outside it a little bit into the mix with the magnesium, into just the magnesium front. Notice how I haven't gone back with any of these other colors to do the face of the axe because I want my lighting direction, but I can now where I have like this nick. I can get that with the bright gold. I can catch a little bit of this right there. Got a nick over here too. With my brightest color, I can do that. Catch those nicks in the metal. And then I can do that everywhere I need to, right? So I can come down here if I want to add a nick that isn't really in the sculpt, but I just like the way that looks, then I can kind of do that right here. Right? If I did want to pick out some of these dents and dings in it, I could just kind of stipple a little bit of brightness along in here. Give it some dimension. Right? And boom. You can do that. That could be your whole army. Notice how we've got a little bit of edge highlight. And that's going to look good. And again, like I like to paint from the bottom, no matter that the light's facing directly at it, look how dark it is from the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? Versus in that same light, how bright it is from the top. Because the way I painted those areas, right? Our little ridges and indentions that stick out down here are not nearly as bright as they are from this direction because I painted all my bright colors up top. So use that same mentality that you see me training you on with non-metallic metal all the time when applying any color for any surface. It's just how bright you go, how much do you change it.
Great. That's
Hope that helps. And you can do that with all of your steels, golds, anything. The same process it would be used. Start with a much darker color. The magnesium is my choice for silver, gold, bronze, copper. I don't care what metal you're painting. Start with magnesium. I don't want to make that a hard, fast rule, but that's what I would do because magnesium follows. It goes into both directions, man. Silvers become really cool. They have a little bit of a dirty nuance in the shadow, which I love when we're painting war-torn models or fighters or whatever, you know, adventurers. It makes sense that your steel's a little bit dirty and gritty in the shadows. So the magnesium just works great. And then over the top of the magnesium, you can blend in dark silver. You can blend, because dark silver is even a little bit brighter. And then you can start blending in silver, and you can get this same kind of a feel.
That's great. And going back to it, Orky Fish, getting these trainers are next on my list. They're great, especially for it all works.
You see how we use them here? This is how you should be using them too. Exactly. Buy one, buy two, and use them exactly like what I'm showing you. Last couple of weeks, we had somebody say, hey, how would I work up some greens?
Yeah.
We did the green cape. We've done them for non-metallics. We've done them for painting the leather, for all this stuff. The reason we call them texture trainers is I try when I design these in the image to bake in as many materials, cloth, hair, skin, metal, leather, right? The axe is intended to be stone. So if you look at the box art one, we painted it as such, right? It's painted like a stone, a polished stone axe, right? So, you know, being able to have all of these materials on there that you can practice with is great, right? And that's why we make sci-fi ones and the chrome that has like, you know, a mushroom, like biological stuff and, you know, a skull and bone and things like that. So between the three of them, if you buy the set, you've got every surface that you want. And then just paint over them again and again and again.
That's their purpose. I use them all the time just for, you know, taking pictures and having Jordan do the shorts. So
the green is going to be something. Chris captured the green.
Yeah, and you know what? That topic, just to give you guys a little, and also going off what Game Delay said, I go silent because I'm recording something, and I want the chef to cook, right? So that was based on glazing and blending that green cloak.
Yeah.
So yes, I have
how to get quick blends. Like when somebody was asking earlier, they're having a hard time with gradients, right? The idea is how you can form a nice gradient, which do a super zoom on this because I want to pop in and show you how not smooth that is.
Yeah, from a 3-foot level.
It's very painterly in its application. You can see my brush strokes. You can see I've done just little doots of bright color to get that edge brighter. But when you're doing fabric, it makes it look good. And when you pull back out, all of those colors blend together really nicely. So for speed, you can get a really nice effect and not have to work too fast. Works great.
Little Billy, can you make it record constantly so I don't have to listen to Chris? The technical answer to that is is that we would have so much hard drive footage we would need if I recorded them all just like that.
Little Billy, don't ever change.
I answered you with a technical question on why I don't just hit record the whole time, because it is a post. It's way too much data. Plus, that's what YouTube is for. Because that's what YouTube is doing for us, is recording. Because it goes live right after this, Little Billy. So I'm answering your jab with a technical correct answer. Now we just have to get Chris. Just have to clone myself. Chat, that's my next goal. That's next on the list. Cloning myself.
Please don't.
What?
I mean, I didn't say that out loud, did I?
Wow. Not like a, oh my gosh, yeah. Or like, oh yeah. No, it was like, don't.
Yeah, I'm not going to put up for
Opposite
that. I'm not
of
going to
that.
stand for that. I'm going to talk to my congressman.
Your congressman. If there was public testing for that, I'd raise my hand. It's like, it's time. Anyway, yes. So, if you have a question, I'm going to go back, look at some of these questions. I know we missed a few because Jason was cooking. There was a question about our rattle cans sometimes getting crackly. Is there a cure to that?
How do you mean crackly?
Yeah, you'll have to explain that a little bit more, Shadowcast. It was cracking. Any idea why?
I'd have to see pictures. The cracking of something like a solvent-based paint, that it's an acetone-based solvent paint, and so it means, I mean, did you put it over a clean model?
That, or, did you shake it well enough? Which I know
Yeah,
sounds
because you got to
silly.
shake it like it owes you money.
Yeah, and you always have that extra spritz beforehand. But yeah, definitely.
And it needs to be at room temperature.
Yeah.
But no, you shouldn't ever have any cracking. Cracking is caused from off-gassing, that the layer of paint underneath it was not dry enough. This can be done if you do a coat of the paint and you leave that coat too long and it starts to cure but not quite enough, and then you put another heavy coat over the top of that, it will cause it to crack because the first coat is almost cured but still off-gassing, and the second coat is not. And as the second coat starts to set up, the bottom coat is curing out from underneath it and causes that top coat to crack. So when you're doing spray paints, you need to spray it, right? And then keep going with another coat right after it. Don't let one coat dry and then put another coat on right over the top, right? I'm liking this color. I'm liking the red oxide over the burgundy and the royal.
It's a little brighter than that burnt red.
Royal purple. Yeah, the red oxide is brighter than burnt red.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives you a little bit more intensity right out of the gates. And it also gives you a really good platform for putting pyro red on the top of without having to mix.
As a highlight?
Yeah, I can go pyro red right over the top of the red oxide, whereas with burnt red, I got to do a mix of the two, right? Because the pyro red and the burnt red are a little bit too much contrast, one right over the other, in most cases.
Yeah, those texture trainers are a great way to...
Oh, somebody asked if we would ever do STLs. It's not on my plan right now, and I have to be honest with you because it would really hurt us in terms of making back our design input on them. I'm not a fan of the STL. If you look at that STL world, companies that sell you a bunch of STLs have to continually make more STLs, and the texture trainers aren't like that. We're not going to make 5 million of them. So I don't have like a Patreon mentality where I can come out with 50 new models next month to make it worth charging you for the STL, and then knowing that, you know, if you give you the STL to all your friends, it doesn't hurt us. Not that it matters at the end of the day, but it's just a matter of there's a lot of cost that goes into the sculpting and such for those. They're kind of like loss leaders. They're not big money makers because we want to make sure that the texture trainer acts like what it is. But I have to spend the same amount of money that someone would to sell you a $150 resin model. We spend the same input on those models to make them from the sculptor. I mean, obviously I do the character design, but we have a character artist that then takes my sketch, refines it for the sculptor sculpts it, I review it, then we print it in-house. So there's a lot of process there. And we just don't do enough of them. If we were doing like, here's the 10 models for January, then we could probably look at it. We're not there yet. We are looking at some games that will include models that we're talking about doing STLs for some of the accessories for the models. I think might be cool. Your face hurt a little by the end of the What Monty Python stream? What were you doing when I wasn't here, Christopher?
I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what you're talking
My
about.
trust levels dive constantly.
I quoted a lot of Monty Python while you're gone.
Game Delay says, one of my biggest painting regrets is that you didn't get red oxide at your last painting order. And I don't have many painting regrets. You haven't bought just the Adepticon set? Like, what are you doing with your life? It has so many great freaking paints in it. Somebody named Monument Gentastic says I'm cute. I'm not supposed to read those out loud because my girlfriend gets mad. So let's all forget that. I have the most amazing, wonderful partner in the world, and I do not want her mad at me. She is loving and beautiful. And hang on, let me get the card.
I'll put it on the teleprompter.
Put it on the teleprompter. Hi, babe. I believe Element Games UK has the trainers. Yes. Well, I don't know if they have them in stock right now, but they order them for sure.
Yeah, they're a great tool.
Chris turned this into a nuke, but you got better.
Yes, I was quoting Monty Python. The gig is up. If you guys want to go check that out, don't.
Burner!
It was a release day. I was so hyped. It's a great day.
She sounds nice. She sounds nice. She is until she forgets to kiss me goodbye when she leaves the office. Which she doesn't do very often. Yesterday she came into my office and she goes, I don't know if I already did. She came to my office, gave me a kiss goodbye and left the office, and then came back into my office and said, I don't know if I already did this, but I don't want to leave you without a kiss, and then kissed me again and left the office.
Jen says,
that was all within about 30 seconds of one another, by the way.
Remember, you have an important call at 4.
I know. Straight up 4 o'clock, we have an important call. So we probably got to quit right around 3:50.
Okay.
So I can get back over to my office and get set
all right
for the call. For all that wonderful biz stuff that somebody asked me, what's the hardest part about business? It's remembering all the meetings.
Dusty Hobbies. I have Satin Black, which is an awesome base rim color.
It's so great.
The Adepticon set is fantastic. Those guys are really cool. Shout out to that terrain team. They were cool. They were cool guys. They do a lot of work.
It's funny because Dallas from Atomic Mass Games was the guy who came up with a lot of their colors. So we always joke that it's like the Dallas Kemp signature set without it being the Dallas Kemp signature set.
Yeah, they do, oh my gosh, it was over, I think, 3,000 pieces last year, and I'm sure it's going to be even more this year. On top of all the
of their terrain is insane.
Oh yeah, and it's not like if you have a cool opportunity to go to Adepticon and you see those tables and the amount of work that people just assume gets done. Like, it's so much
They're
painting.
literally insane.
And if you go up close to them, they're great. It's not slap chopped anything. It's quick,
insane.
But it is not like...
Hank sends me these photos in my inbox all the time of like, hey, here's what we did last weekend. And it's like, what?
And now
how many thousands of buildings for Tau tables did you make? He goes, oh, I don't know. I think there's like 1,500.
Yeah,
I was like, excuse me, what?
Yeah, time that by 3,000. So anyway, shout out to those guys. They do awesome work. Really gets you into the realm of gaming with all their painting.
Like,
so
squeeze me.
I'm glad that we were able to partner with them that way. Plus, that set is dope.
Oh yeah,
Everything in
I
that
mean,
set is
I can literally say that one of those colors makes it on damn near every model I do.
magnesium, red oxide. Like I love all of our other signature sets. I love all of them, but that one is it's up there.
Yeah, red oxy's awesome. It's that color that fits right between burnt red and pyro red. We're gonna go to pyro red next.
Yeah.
So
Masters of the DA100 brush.
What's that?
No, Game Delay says they're masters of the DA100 brush. I don't know what you're talking about. I'd like to see some proof. I'll have to go back in the archives and interesting. Jason was using that on.
Interesting.
April 1st.
That looks exactly like you, Christopher.
No, it doesn't. I see Jason HBM craze on the tubes, as the kids say. I was driving back from San Diego. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I have to put up with Chet.
Wad, there are so many great tables. I think the Infinity ones are always some of my favorites. I'm a sucker for lights and such. Oh yeah, they do amazing work. So I'm very excited to see what they have done this year.
It only gets better and better every year too, because they refine their process. They get more people painting, so not everybody has to do 50 buildings a piece. They can focus, and yeah, it's incredible. And the fact that they basically loan that stuff out to smaller tournaments around the country, it just blows my mind.
It's such a cool
Hank and his team are literally like the heroes of the hobby.
They are
when it comes to tournament terrain.
It is super cool. Swifter Bear, sorry, Chris. No sorries needed. I wanted to ask a question again. Having issues with the tip of my brushes staying really stiff, even after soaking them. Is there anything I can do to prevent that? You can call your doctor.
If the tip stays stiff for longer than 4 hours, yes.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Real question.
So explain to me stiff tip. No, I'm serious. This is not something that I'm experienced with. Is this something where it's is there dried paint in the tip of the brush, do you think?
Are you at... Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So it's not about keeping that, because we do have a video on that, but this is a different question. You're saying having issues with the tips of my brush staying really stiff. Interesting.
Yeah, it's not something I'm familiar with, so I would have to think in terms of...
If your brush is stiff for longer than 4 hours, seek medical attention. Oh, yes, I read that, Wad, thinking that was Swifter Bear saying that. Yeah, you'll have to... did you leave any solution or something in it? Did you not clean it enough? I'm not sure. You'll have to explain that.
If you leave our brush soap in it, it will act as a starch... almost, and make the tip stiff to keep the point nice, and then you just rinse that before you go in and start painting. But that doesn't sound like what you're talking about. It sounds more like maybe you've got an issue where there's paint dried in the tip of the brush. That seems odd to me, though.
Swifter Bear, here we go. I'm unsure how, but they're not moving. The body is softer, but the tip is still stiff. I've been using Gentastic's brush soap, so that might be the issue.
Well, it's intended to leave in the brush when you're done, and then you rinse it out with water and clean it, and then it'll clean, because that's what we do.
You definitely want to rinse it though.
Yeah.
If you've left the brush and goop
100%.
in there, yeah. One of these days, Jen, I don't know if you're still out there, but I feel one of these days we should have a stream, a Gentastic class on brush care.
She's the queen. She knows it all.
Because then I could record it, and then it could be the last video you ever need to watch on keeping your brush clean. Which actually I think would be really cool.
But Jen's so much cooler than me that might cause a problem with my overall views.
That's right. It'd be a big one because it's a very, you go on YouTube, y'all. There's a lot of them out there, but her goop definitely is amazing stuff. So we could showcase that.
Oh my God, this makes
She did it once on stream while you were gone. with Jordan of like bringing another brush back to life.
Yep.
But I'd like to do it in this format.
She has done it so many times where she'll pull a brush out of our stock that is like, yeah, that's for the garbage.
Yep.
And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're using it again.
I think that would be great. Chat
She did
confirms.
it with Jordan, one of Jordan's brushes, and it was the same way. He was like, what the? I'm just glazing Pyro Red into my red oxide areas. I'll even get a little bit in the shadows from time to time just to pull it all together.
When can I fly out for monument painting classes? That's Orky Fish.
You want to zoom in, like super zoom? You can see, get a nice smooth red, but my purple still stays in the darkest. My burgundies still show through, my red oxide. This is just a really great red workup that you can do that is, don't mix any of your colors. This is just 4 colors. Done super easy, straightforward. Not too complicated. I'm doing a little bit of glazing, but nothing over the top.
Jason, it's time for you to go.
Is it 350?
It's just about to be.
No freaking
It's
way.
349.
Dadgummit. Well, there we go. We got red cloth.
Nice.
I'll still need to do a little bit of highlighting on it, but this would be where I would stop on the red cloth anyway until we now go and start working more color into the gold in the surrounding areas. The leather straps that we've got on his front, he's got a belt that goes through there. There's a spot where it looks like I missed the gold on a hip plate. He's got these hip plates that I didn't get the top of over here. But I'm going to keep going through and adding color to the scabbard, the hilt, his hair, flesh. All of that is what's next, is all that base coating. He's got his leopard print, his snow leopard pelt that comes off of his left shoulder. So we've got to do all that. We'll get some color on everything to get rid of our base coat, and then we'll go back in and start dialing in the gold armor once we have color on everything. So we're at that getting close chat stage. Danger says, thank you for all the info. Have a great day. You have a great day. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with us again. If you're new here, please hit that follow button or the subscribe button if you're over on the YouTubes. We stream simulcast on both channels every day, 2 to 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time here in Phoenix, Arizona. We'd love to see you back. As Ghost Hunter says, you can also join the Discord that Chris has put the link up for. We have 5,465 amazing artists in the Discord watching me cook for Therapy Thursday. This was Thursday, too. And I did give some good therapy today. Look at us getting back to the goal.
That's right.
Awesome.
See?
You guys have had some amazing questions today. I love the content when you drive it that way. I hope that I was able to give some inspiration and some good answers back to you. We got to paint some gold, show you some metallic paint so that you could get a little bit of benefit from how to use those in a way that is very, very similar. That's a really neat kind of tarnished gold now that I'm looking back at it. It looks good. So hopefully you saw something on the stream that piques your interest and gets you interested in starting another project or continuing on a project you're already doing. Love to hear it. Love to see you back. Make sure you check out all the links for the store and the FLGS link, which will show you all the hundreds of wonderful local gaming stores that we have around the world that sell our products. Please support your local dealer. They do all the hard work and provide you with a great place to go play games and hang out and meet new friends. Support your local Monument Hobbies dealer in particular. But thanks for hanging out. Make sure that you stick around. Chris is going to find another wonderful hobbyist to raid. Show some love on the channel we wind up in. And we'll catch you back here tomorrow for the Weekender. Right? Adios, gang.